So today, very important topic. It's obviously quite relevant considering the situation that we have in China. We're going to be talking a little bit about the various digital platforms that are available to you that are inside of China, both those that are on the web as well as those that are for social. So today, we'll skip over that, thanks to the great introduction from Cecilia. Of course, this topic has become increasingly important due to the coronavirus. Most notably, I don't want to dive too much into corona. I'm sure you've seen the reports and there's a webinar coming later. But because schools have been shut down for such a long period of time, and this virus doesn't seem like it's going to abate in the immediate future, there's actually been an explosion in activity online. So there's actually been an incredible experiment in China with students actually staying home for the most part through March 1st. Most schools are looking to reopen around March 1st, March 2nd. That general time frame, of course, Wuhan being the exception. And throughout that time, there has been massive cancellations of everything from airlines to in-country events. We recently did a survey of the institutions that we work with. Most have actually canceled their spring travel indefinitely. So 43 of them actually decided they canceled all of their spring tour, their spring travel. 22 indefinitely. 43 have just canceled all of their spring activities. And then a lot of others are up in the air, either canceling through February, canceling through March. And so this has been a really difficult time for higher education because there's a large number of college fairs and education events that are held throughout this period. That being said, there is a glimmer of hope. It is showing that there are alternative channels. There are options for students who want to go online. Actually, just literally last week, we did this very same presentation at the Chinese embassy because they recognize that this is in Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C. For about 200 American institutions, because they recognized just how important this is, that they get accurate information out to as many students and institutions as possible to avoid any potential consequences of this carrying into the future. So the goal obviously is for this to be, for the disease ultimately to be contained, but of course the social implications of the disease to also be contained. So I'd say there's a pretty strong effort on all sides to help make sure that everyone kind of gets through this safely. Now, there is a glimmer of hope, just the last thing here about corona, that it does look like as the weather warms up and as the containment efforts come into place, that there are more and more individuals that are recovering than are actually getting the disease, at least particularly in mainland China. So China does seem like they have the situation at least slightly more under control. You can see these green bars, this is the recovered individuals, and now there's actually more recovered individuals than individuals actually getting the disease. And this is the trend that we've seen for the past couple of days now. So a very good sign. I would say the attitude of most people that we have, we surveyed also 100 of our staff in China. They definitely are feeling a little bit better, though they're all a little bit shaky. So because they've been home for so long. So these are just things that you keep in mind as we consider digital promotion. There's some sensitivity to be thought about as we talk about each of the given platforms. Now, I don't want to spend too much more time talking about corona, but I will, for each digital platform that we review, give you a little bit of a lens into how corona is currently affecting that platform. So one of the things that, before we sort of jump in, is we, at our college fairs last year, surveyed 4,000 students that participated at some of our events that were willing to take the survey. Where do they get the information that informs their college research? And so left being 1 and right being 10. Or being the worst. So basically bars that are on the blue or red or yellow are strong choices, and then these on the right are weaker choices. So no surprise, in college fairs and in-person sessions, definitely the #1 source of information. We all know that. That's the reason why college fairs are very important. Unfortunately, in times like these, they're not necessarily as practical. Now, what we found very interesting is where you're also seeing very strong correlations. So this is be an example of like #2, where we were slightly surprised. Chinese search engines like Baidu. was actually got very, very strong results with #1 or most results in #1, #2, and #3. So that's something to be thinking about, because a lot of people wouldn't think that students would take as much time to go onto Baidu and look likely at a Baidu or Baike or Zhihu page. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do on those various platforms, because it does look like students are getting a good amount of information there. The other is WeChat accounts and Weibo accounts, which actually have a surprising strength in the beginning of these bars as well. So you are seeing a large number of students that are looking for things outside of college fairs. Of course, other things, so English search didn't do so well. Emails, and this may not surprise a ton of you, didn't do so well, because Chinese aren't great at checking their email. So you can see, unfortunately, that isn't as effective. And advice from college counseling companies. This, a quick note here, increasingly, we've seen this go from very, very important to increasingly less important over the last 4 years as we continue to do this survey. I don't have that graph with me, but it's been falling precipitously over time. And the main reason for that, first, is the fracturing of those agencies into many, many different smaller agencies, which we call 工作室, as well as the rise of in-school college counselors. So as there's more international schools, more people are getting that advice in school, those in-school counseling areas. So today, we're going to do a run through a couple different digital platforms. You can see here on the right some of the things we're going to talk about. This is like Weixin, Weibo, Toutiao, Douyin. These are sort of the core fundamentals when it comes to Chinese social. We're going to talk a little bit about knowledge platforms like Zhihu or Douban. We're going to talk a little bit about search like Baidu or Sogou. So the first thing that I always tell everyone when they're first engaging with the digital presence in China is you need to know yourself. The first thing, you need to know what a Chinese student, parent, counselor, agency, university representative is going to see when they look for you. And you would be amazed at how many people have not actually been able to do this yet, or haven't taken the time to do this. So you would search for your Chinese name and maybe your English name and related things. And what you'd find is, for a lot of you, or a lot of institutions who haven't taken the time to curate an online presence, it's just going to be a bunch of ads, some of which that are related, some of which are unrelated, most likely shooting towards various agencies. So here's an example of a school that's just learning how to do this, University of Southern California, where when you actually look for them, it's just a series of advertisements for different agencies, sometimes even other schools. Whereas an institution that we've helped take a little bit more serious, their online digital presence, the University of Oregon, has bumped up their Chinese website, their Chinese pages, their Chinese knowledge platforms. And these are just the things that you can do so that when someone's looking for you, they can actively find you. Now, there's a lot of strategies for doing that, which we'll get to in the first place. The first is to localize a Chinese website. So one of the things that you would need is something locally hosted in China that'll have a much lower bounce rate. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Great Firewall in that it blocks, say, Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube. But what people don't always realize is that it also throttles the speed of many hosting services. So if you have a website that's hosted on a Google server or a website that's hosted on an AWS server, it can have an extremely high bounce rate. A bounce rate is how many people click into the website, wait, and then decide, you know what, no, this is taking too long, and then bounce. So generally, the reason it's taking so long is because it's not blocked. It's not completely blocked. It's just very, very slow. It can also have different block speeds based on mobile, based on web, and in different areas of the country. So it's important to do a speed test in various regions. If anyone needs help doing a speed test or a bounce test or a web presence test, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to do that for you complimentary. Now, one of the things that people don't always realize as well is everyone used to be familiar with Baidu. Everyone knows that Baidu for a long time was China's Google. It was very dominant in the search place. But actually, in the past 2 years, it's been losing its dominance. So you're seeing a big rise in competitors, most notably Sanliuling and Shenma. because they're actually coming pre-installed in mobile devices or pre-installed in laptops, so that when people are buying those laptops, that is their default search engine. And so as a result, they've really been chipping away at some of Baidu's dominance. You're also seeing other searches like Sogou in Bing that are taking up a little bit of development as well. And so what that means is you don't just want to concentrate on Baidu, you want to think about the other search engines that are out there. Actually, probably very interesting, we'll talk about this later, Toutiao under ByteDance is actually launching their own search engine, which I'll explain later why that's very important. But ultimately, the biggest thing that you want to understand is that as Baidu slowly loses its dominance, the opportunities to leverage search for effective marketing, for search engine marketing campaigns, SEM campaigns, and doing effective SEO grows immensely. Because for a long time, Baidu wouldn't treat universities fairly, and certain terms like study abroad Australia or study abroad United States would be extremely expensive because there was just one platform and they could charge whatever they wanted. Now that's increasingly not true over time. So anyway, that's something to be very excited about. It's something you should be thinking about. Now, the one caveat there is if you do want to use Chinese search for search engine marketing campaigns, you do need to have a locally hosted site, and it needs to have what's called an ICP license, which means it needs to be linked to a local entity, very similar in some ways to a WeChat official account. You need to have that verification first before you can run ads. That's just a legal requirement. There's a lot of reasons for it. Won't go into it now. Of course, as I mentioned, was going to tell you sort of a lens of how people are dealing with Corona on each of these platforms. You can imagine the top searches right now on Baidu, on 360, on pretty much every major search engine are about the coronavirus. And so that's something to be thinking about, unfortunately, for institutions, sometimes for the wrong reasons. So some people right now are asking questions, and this is an example of one of the knowledge platforms, Zhihu, and one that we frequently use for search engine optimization, similar to like a Reddit or a Quora globally, is people are asking about how is the virus going to impact applications for study abroad. They're looking for application deadline extensions. They're trying to find out if this is going to lead to racism, or if it's safe still for them to study abroad, because there's a lot of reports in China of active racism for Chinese that are traveling internationally. So this has two major implications. One, these types of questions are very popular right now, and they're covering the internet. So if anything happens, a lot of institutions aren't necessarily as aware of their online reputations or their online image. This is a very important time, particularly for an Australian institution, because you have so many students who are unable to come to campus, is an unofficial source of information, which is sometimes accurate and sometimes not. So you definitely want to be active at answering these questions as much as possible and directing them towards an accurate source of information, like a Chinese web page or a WeChat account, where you can have some active Q&A. So anyway, so Zhihu, this is in a sort of a situation of Corona. It's a little bit different than normal. Ordinarily, the questions we would see would be something like this, like, how does it feel to study at Lakehead University? Or which SUNY, State University of New York, is better? Or which one should I attend? Or for these different universities, this is Santa Barbara, Oregon, Wisconsin-Madison, which should I choose? And you'll see that this is a really great opportunity if you were one of those three universities to make a good case for yourself, either officially or unofficially. If you have an official account and you can actively respond to some of these questions on behalf of the university or as a representative of the university, that's awesome. If you don't, and you can have student workers who can actually actively post on your account and you can curate or reward them for those responses, that can be very effective as well. So it's very important to know sort of what people are asking about you and are asking about things that are related to you. So it's a great way to sort of curate your image over time. Zhihu's importance, I think, has exploded, particularly in the past 2 years or so. So it's definitely something you should be thinking about. It also has huge impact on search engine results. So if you can do a great job on Zhihu, you can actively boost your presence as well for your Chinese website. Official accounts, I don't want to talk too much about these. Of course, there are two different types of official accounts. There's service accounts, there's subscription accounts. There's wide information about the two differences. We generally do recommend people do subscription accounts because you can post every day. Service accounts can only post once a week. But they also have a tendency, service accounts tend to be unfollowed a lot more because they're very aggressive about how they send you the post. So as a result, we generally recommend service accounts. You do need to have a local Chinese partner generally to get a subscription account, but that's not super difficult to do. So if anyone has questions about WeChat, feel free to let us know. There are, however, two things about WeChat that I'd like to mention before moving on. The first is that the easiest way to think of WeChat is digital word of mouth. It is not, by any extent of the imagination, an effective advertising platform. It is a super powerful referral platform. And why do I say that is because WeChat isn't incentivized to provide you very good advertising tools. It's actually, it makes most of its money from WeChat Pay and from what are called WeChat mini programs, 微信小程序, which is basically e-commerce, which generates much, much more revenue for Tencent than official accounts and advertising do. So with the exception of, say, luxury brands or consumer brands like Coca-Cola, things like that, it's actually highly inefficient and very expensive for an institution to market on WeChat because you generally have to leverage KOLs, which is very, very expensive in China. So generally what we recommend is if you have already hundreds of Chinese on your campus or you actively recruit in China, it's awesome to have this because you can scan the QR code. Students who are already on your campus or alumni can share that. Agencies can share that QR code, share that account. And then it's a powerful word of mouth mechanism. It isn't where you're actively running campaigns. It's sort of where you're funneling campaigns to and building it over time. So it's a fundamental difference when you think about it from sort of traditional social media marketing. Of course, looking again through the lens of Corona, it is a great place to see what students, parents, teachers are thinking about. So you can see them talking about now in their WeChat moments about this vast online experience of taking classes at home and working at home. You can see some that are happy about it, some that are less happy about it. You see a lot of online blessings and prayers for support for the people of Wuhan and for people's friends and for people that are on the front lines. And then you have a lot of other people who are kind of upset, sad, scared because they haven't been able to leave their house and they don't know what's going to happen. So it's really impacted people's life in a very big way. And so when you're posting, you should be aware of it. This isn't sort of life as normal as you would traditionally do it. This is something that we need to address as institutions and actively respond to. And so one of the best ways to do that is to, if you haven't done this already, is to write an active post of solidarity, at least one, where you can actually post about sort of your support for Chinese students, for your Chinese community, where you can actually demonstrate that you care by running donation campaigns or demonstrating that the students on your campus are running donation campaigns, providing access to health resources, saying basically what your administration is doing for both Chinese students and their families back home. And so this is an incredibly way to demonstrate, you know what, you're listening, you care about that Chinese community, and they're an active part of the university. So anyway, something to be thinking about and to do if you haven't already. If you need help crafting one of those messages, again, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help you provide that support. Now for Weibo, it's very, very different. Weibo basically died in, say, 2013 or so. It's actually much older than WeChat. People don't always know that because in the beginning, it was basically a Twitter copy. With a lot of very, very important people who are getting online and actively using it. But unfortunately, when it went head-to-head with WeChat in, say, 2011, 12, and 13, it lost horribly. So it really plummeted in terms of user engagement. And recently, however, as it started to adopt a more Instagram stories style feel, it's sort of recovered in a pretty significant way. So you can see recently, you're now looking at about 500 million monthly active users. It's really come back as a strong social platform. And probably most importantly for institutions is that it really cares and has a very strong advertising platform called Fensitong. And so if you have an official verified account, you can actually actively run 分系统 campaigns. And 分系统 campaigns are important for institutions because you can do demographic targeting. You can target people by region, by spending, by interest. So you can find out if someone is looking at your region, reading articles or posts, or following people that are talking about study abroad, or GMAT or GRE or TOEFL or whatever it is that you're looking to specifically engage. And there's many strategies for doing that. And so if you're looking for an advertising platform, not a digital platform for word of mouth, which WeChat is, then Weibo might be something you want to seriously consider. I will say the biggest issue that Weibo continuously has and always has had is what's called Jiangshi, which is basically zombie followers. It still has this issue, though it has gotten much better over time. Instead, what we've seen is they've overcompensated by basically making advertising on a per click or per impression basis significantly less expensive than other platforms. So sure, you're getting some zombie engagement, but because you get so much more than you would on other platforms, it makes up for it. So basically that's their strategy for engaging it. Like I said, probably the most powerful and effective message that you can put out in WeChat or Weibo at the moment is to actively do something. It's not just to talk about it, but to run a donation campaign or empower students and support students in running a donation campaign. These are all ongoing. These are just some that we've found that are a little bit more legitimate. You do want to be careful when doing those because not all Chinese charities are the same, and they can have some difficulties behind them. So make sure if you are running a donation campaign, you're doing it through an official channel. These are just some examples of institutions that have run very successful donation campaigns, and as a result have seen an outpouring of support and really a lot of appreciation and respect from their Chinese community. So what does that advertising on 分系统 look like? Well, you can see it allows you to target things based on trends. It can actually be interactive giveaways where there's actually a raffle that's involved, and it can be specified by specific categories like education. So there's a lot of different things you can do, a lot of nuance here. You can post videos, you can run pictures, you can do specific texts. You can do forwarding campaigns. There's a lot of active tools that they provide you that can be very successful. So anyone wants to learn more about that, always happy to discuss in more detail later. My personal favorite, and probably the new up-and-coming rock star of digital marketing in China, is definitely ByteDance. And so ByteDance, many of you are familiar with TikTok, which is its global brand. It's actually acquired a company called Musical.ly, which is now TikTok globally, where you have a lot of people doing funny dances and showing off funny videos. Now, Douyin, which is Chinese TikTok, or the Chinese version of TikTok, is actually older and much more established than international TikTok. So it is a little bit different, so that's something to think about. It has different functions, different followers. But they also own an app called Toutiao. And Toutiao is really interesting because it's aggregating Chinese news. It's basically a one-stop shop from slightly more official information, where people are finding sources of magazines, official accounts, people that are posting sort of slightly more substantiated content. And as a result, users spend many, many more hours on Toutiao than TikTok. Now, that being said, it has many fewer monthly or weekly active users. It tends to be in the couple 100 million, like 200 million, 300 million, as opposed to TikTok, which can be close to 1 billion. So it definitely doesn't have as many active users because it's not quite as fun. It's actually more content related. However, those tend to be a little bit more sophisticated users and much, much easier to target. Also, they are actively creating a search engine. So ByteDance is going to be actively competing against Baidu in the search market as well. So they're now taking on WeChat and Weibo with TikTok. They're taking on basically Zhihu and a couple of other platforms, maybe not Zhihu, maybe more Weibo with Toutiao. And now they're taking over, going after Sogou and Baidu with their search engine. So you can see it's kind of really interesting how they've been able to raise so much capital and very actively target some of these other larger organizations. And we think this is great because if you're on the advertising side, this is an incredible opportunity for them to compete against each other, which leads to lower advertising rates. to lower marketing rates. They have to be a much nicer, much more supportive, because they all are competing for people to actively use their platform. So some competition against these giants can be highly effective and something that you should be looking at. So Toutiao is like trending media, trending news. And the reason why that's so important is we can follow people that are trending specific types of news. So for example, people that are trending and talking about donation campaigns or following universities. These are some examples that are Corona-related articles that are currently on Toutiao. So people that are asking about the response from universities or embassies or visa policies. And what this is doing is giving Toutiao a very accurate understanding of who each of these users are. And so that when you want to use the back-end marketing platform to target individual students, there's a lot of very good targeting data, which can allow Toutiao campaigns, similar to Weibo campaigns, to be very effective. Now, one thing about Toutiao campaigns that is very, very different than Weibo is in Weibo, your campaigns are driving traffic to a Weibo official account. And so you're driving followers, you're driving shares, you're driving impressions to your account. Now, as a result, it's important that you're constantly posting articles on that account. So there's a regular maintenance that needs to go into this, where you're posting article after article after article. Toutiao decided not to do that. So instead, when you're running a Toutiao campaign, you're either driving people to a HTML5 reg form and just collecting the contact info, linking them to a website, which is interesting, or linking them to a WeChat or Weibo account. So it took a completely different approach. Instead of forcing people to actively run campaigns on Toutiao, which they're not interested in doing, they're simply getting high quality content and driving people to other platforms. Now, Weibo and WeChat never wanted to do that because they wanted to protect themselves. They wanted a user on WeChat to always stay on WeChat. They wanted a user on Weibo to always stay on Weibo. And so they wouldn't be as friendly in providing sort of your destination for where you wanted that user to go. Whereas Toutiao's taken the opposite approach and is giving you a lot of freedom of the types of things that you can do. So you can post images, you can post videos, you can post a group of images together, which you can see here, and it can become a very powerful message because you're targeting it and sending it only to people who are searching for related content. Now, its cousin, also owned under that same group company, ByteDance, is TikTok, or Douyin, Chinese TikTok. Now, I used to tell everyone that TikTok was not the place for universities, and that was true. Because most TikTok videos or Douyin videos were silly, funny dance videos, and so as a result, TikTok didn't have the kind of demographic data that you needed. Your goal, for instance, isn't just to target 18-year-olds, it's to target, or 18, 19, 20-year-olds, it's to target those same students that want to study abroad. And if you're just targeting those two different buckets, one is just a drop of water in the ocean, right? Chinese has tons, millions and millions of students, tens of millions of students between those relevant ages, even in the relevant wealth areas, wealth demographic as well. And so you need more information, better engagement. So now, because of Corona, you're actually seeing TikTok slowly shift from only being about funny, interesting content to taking on a little bit more of a serious tone, where you have citizen journalists, you have individuals posting about their lives, you have people that are posting important information about how they're dealing with the virus, how to make face masks at home. And so it's taking on this very sort of different live streaming feel of a platform. And that's really important, because then as you have different types of content, different type that isn't just funny videos, you get much better demographic information and can target much more effectively for advertising. I wouldn't say that you definitely need to be on TikTok right now or definitely want to be advertising there, but it is something you should be watching. The government in particular has been using it in some interesting ways by posting 1 minute and 90-second long videos about Corona. I'm not going to show you the whole video here, but just as a very, very brief example, they've been able, you can see this is just 1 minute and 20 seconds long, where they're actually taking you through a short story, a narrative, of how Wuhan has been suffering through this, but then it tells you this glorious and story of the world is rallying together, the entire country, to bring sort of support to Wuhan, and that Wuhan is going to experience a rebirth. So anyway, it's a very interesting way of telling a short narrative, which has been very powerful, and something that institutions can think about long term. Now, as ByteDance and TikTok has experienced such massive popularity, you've seen various forms of imitation coming from Weibo and WeChat. So the fundamental difference, however, is where you access those videos. So of course, with TikTok, the videos are right up front, right? With Douyin, it's all about the videos. So right in the beginning, it's all videos, all followers. Now with WeChat, they still are keeping a very referral, personal-based access to videos. You're only going to see videos in these forms of time capsules. Time capsules are your friends or people that you're following that are posting posting videos of their own, posting videos of things of their lives. So it's still keeping it relatively personal. The final being sort of the Instagram stories approach, where you actually click on with Weibo, where you click on videos and can go into stories. And it looks identical to Instagram stories, very similar to these videos. When you open them up, the video experience is identical, but it's interesting to see sort of where they are in each app. So with TikTok, it's the videos up front. With WeChat, it's the videos of your friends that are inside your Moments feed. And with Weibo, it's one of the main options, but not the only main option. So it's interesting to sort of see the balance there between the platforms and to kind of watch how that evolves over time. For these days, in a world where going to China is very, very hard, you are seeing a lot of institutions that are shifting to more online forms of engagement. So in China, you have this massive experiment with people leveraging online platforms to answer questions and to teach classes. Now, for international institutions, it's relatively similar. You can now, instead of running offline fairs, instead run online live streams. Sorry, just getting a little sip of coffee there. And these online live streams can be done on many different platforms. So one example is Zhoomo. Zhoomo looks identical in many ways to the platform we're using now, Zoom. You might say that they copied it. It looks very, very similar. It is in Mandarin, but because it is a locally hosted platform, it is much more effective and easy to use in China. So something you can consider using. As I mentioned, in the Zhibo space, the live stream space, TikTok has become actually increasingly important, mostly for sharing short videos and short live streams, but it's something that you can be looking at. And personally, my favorite in sharing live streams or webcasts is this last platform, WeKaijiang, which is a VKaijiang, which is basically a online teaching tool that now can be repurposed for many other elements. And now what's interesting about it is it requires no downloads of any kind. So it's very effective if you want to have a admitted student reception or an info session online. People can access it simply by registering through WeChat. And you can share it through WeChat with a very simple link. So I think it turns to work very, very well for sort of those online info sessions. You can see an example here of what the WeKaijiang platform looks like. This is an info session we did for NJIT. And you can see sort of it has that chat function for Q&A, presentations, it records the session, and all of the students are going to see it either on mobile, which is this screen here on the right, or in desktop mode, which is here on the left, and super, super easy to access. So highly recommend doing this if all of your offline engagement is temporarily suspended. Now, we also organize every year a series of online webcasts or shared webcasts. So particularly now, these have become increasingly important because many people can't actually go. The way that we do these actually is we're broadcasting into schools. So we actually we visit schools every year in the fall and the spring, but generally in the winter and the summer, this year also in the fall and the spring, we run these shared webcasts where you're broadcasting into actually schools around the country. And so that way we guarantee a much larger audience, generally about 1,000 or so participating students for a given series. So if you're interested interested in joining one of those series, each series is 6 universities speaking for roughly a total of about 70 minutes or so, with each school getting about 10 minutes to participate. Combination of about 5-6 minutes of introducing your school and another 5 or so minutes answering questions in a panel format. So generally do about 3 of those in a given series, and can be a very good experience if fairs are no longer an option for you, at least in the short term. So coming towards the end of the digital innovations that I wanted to share with you, this is probably the most exciting and definitely the most interesting in my opinion, because of China's very significant investment into 5G technology. We've seen a boom in virtual reality content. And what this means is you can actually record virtual reality videos with a very simple $400, $500 off-the-shelf VR camera of your campus, and then share those videos on Chinese social media and on the Chinese internet, and they can be downloaded. So you can see these are just examples of 2 cameras. Here's the Gear, here's the Insta360 One X. And because internet speeds are so much faster, you don't have to download anything. You can literally just take an image. It's super easy to capture a VR image because it's capturing full 360 degrees. And then you can share images of your campus, videos of your school, and you can then send those either to students or walk them through it while you're doing an info session, or actually bring it with you when you're going to a fair. So what it allows you to do is you take it, you can upload it, and then do a campus visit. You can capture leads. I'm going to show you a very quick example of what this would look like in the context of a live stream. Let me give you 1 second. So in the context of a live stream, this would look something like this. Go to Creator. Let's see, gotta load these up. Let's see, load up a few more while we're at it. Let's maybe load this one. Let's go to Harvard, why not? And while you're doing it, so I could, for example, as an admissions counselor, actually say like, you know what, this is the central quad of Columbia University, this is Butler Library, talk about the library, show images of inside the library if I wanted to, and actually give them a full sort of walkthrough experience, or have counselors doing it on their own from home. Students that were interested can actually instantly go and contact admissions directly from the head, from the homepage, if that is something that they're interested in doing. They can actually walk around the campus if they'd like by following specific arrows, and they can do this both from their computer, but also from their cell phone or from a virtual reality headset, and from any browser. Notice I'm just in Safari right now. I'm not doing anything particularly special. Here's another example. You can actually embed video stories and audio stories. You won't hear this if I play it now, but it can actually read me through with the voice of one of the participating students that are there. So again, here's a nice little trip to Harvard, which is can be kind of fun. Can take us inside so you get an idea of what the campus looks like. Anyway, so these are things that you should be thinking about in terms of new and innovative ways of engaging different types of communities. So that's always something you can think about. Want to show you a quick example of what virtual reality videos can do. So here's an example of a virtual reality student life video. So while that's loading, so basically it takes you to a picture like this, and then you can actually see, I don't know if you guys can see it through the stream, I can actually see what campus is like. There's the sound in my ears. I am actually seeing the students playing football and hanging out on the campus. So it can be really exciting, just something that you should be aware of as an option as you get better and more sophisticated uses of this technology. Now, what's super cool is, like I said, you can take that virtual reality content and share it into your Chinese social media. So you can actually pop this right into Weibo and then have a full 360 image experience in your Weibo account. Again, not hard to do. So yeah, so it's good for info sessions, fairs. It's great for having a VR promotional video, which is kind of cool, and it's super easy to do. So if you have any questions, we have something called a DIY guide, a do-it-yourself guide. You can get a VR camera for a couple $100, film your campus, and if you send us 6 images, we're happy to upload them for you for free. We actually have that Campus 360 platform, so we can just take care of that for you. And then we have the 360 campus.cn version for our inside of China hosted server. So we've got the international server, the Chinese server, so that it can stay nice and fast inside that firewall. So take those images, send them to us, we'll upload them for you totally for free, and you'll have access all around the world. So just some examples. Now, what I would suggest, finally, before we end, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Cecilia or the CHE team. You can let us know. If you fill out this form and you have any changes to your admissions policies due to coronavirus, please let us know. We will share that on all of our websites. So we do share that with our Chinese counselors and our Chinese students, just so they know that if, for example, there's any late admission policies or your test optional or changing your test requirement policies due to coronavirus, definitely let us know, we'll make that available. Always happy to schedule a follow-up call, specific questions you might have as well. If you are interested in those upcoming student webcasts, again, you can reach out to CHE, learn a little bit more about those upcoming events, and answer those questions. Always happy to have you join. So with that, open up to a couple of Q&A questions. Thank you for listening to me. Hopefully I haven't talked your ears off. I know it was a lot of information. We are happy to share the slides with you, so no worries there if you didn't catch absolutely everything. Anyway, with that, I will turn it over to Cecilia. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gavin. The participants should be able to see the Q&A button towards the bottom of your screen. So we already got a couple of questions there. I will get through them. So the first question is, our topic is beyond WeChat. So do you have any tips, suggestions on, in terms of marketing, WeChat marketing versus beyond WeChat marketing? How do we balance those two?
So the short answer is it really depends on the resources and size of the institution. So for example, if you're a school with just say 50 or 100 Chinese students, you might not feel the need to have a WeChat official account at all. You might simply just use a WeChat personal account linked to a cell phone number in your office, and that might be sufficient. If you are, generally, we don't recommend getting WeChat official accounts until you have, as an institution, upwards of, say, 300 or so Chinese students on campus in a given year. And the reason for that is because it's so hard and slow to grow a WeChat official account presence because the advertising tools are so weak. And so as a result, you really need to push your accepted students, admitted students, their parents, families, agencies you work with, all to follow it. So first off, only really consider WeChat official account if you're on the larger institution, 300 plus. Of course, if you start getting into the 800, 1,000, 2,000 or more, you definitely should have a WeChat account immediately. And then you shouldn't really think of WeChat as a marketing tool so much as a yield tool. It's more for engaging your accepted students, admitted students, and having various types of articles or raffles or giveaways that people are willing to share and otherwise find information about you. It's because if someone isn't interested in your institution, they're going to unfollow your account right away. So they already have either some sort of casual interest or they're already interested. So just keep that in mind. These other marketing tools that I've given you, many of them can be used to actually drive traffic to your WeChat account. So for example, if you do a campaign on Toutiao, or you're doing a campaign even on Weibo, you can drive most of the Q&A and question engagement to the WeChat platform. So you're using a campaign on, say, Weibo, or a campaign on Toutiao or TikTok in the future, or Zhihu, to drive followers, to drive engagement or interested people to that account, because you can use the very targeted advertising platforms that those other platforms offer. So that's really the the key is to spend your advertising dollars where they're most likely to be targeted and effective and not overly expensive. Even when you're doing sort of online search engine marketing, you would still feature that WeChat QR code on that Chinese local website. So even if you're doing a campaign on, say, Baidu or Sogo, you're driving people from that campaign to the website where they can actually get in contact with you with that WeChat QR code. Because as you know, and as you saw in the earlier data, students are much more willing to use WeChat than they are to use email. So if you do have that WeChat there, it's a lot easier to get in contact with them. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, I just want to extend that question a bit. So would you say that without a proper marketing budget, just having a WeChat alone is not going to be that useful?
Depending on the size of the institution. So if you don't have a marketing budget, but you still have hundreds and hundreds of Chinese students or thousands of Chinese students, you can still be relatively effective simply because you have so many given, you can already just use it as a way of engaging that existing Chinese community. So you can have your Chinese professors, faculty members, you can have the Chinese student associations and organizations and Chinese partners all follow it. However, if you're a smaller institution and you don't have a budget, WeChat's probably not a good idea.
Okay, thanks. Our second question is there like a top 3 media channels you think are most appropriate to university come to China market? If there are 3 on top of your mind, and is there any indication of a cost you can share?
Yep. Absolutely. So the answer to this is it really depends on the institution. And so, for example, the suggestion that I would give to a liberal arts college is infinitely different than what I would offer to a national state university. And because the sheer sort of approach would be significantly different. So for example, if you're already a large enough institution, I would say probably consider getting on WeChat as like your home, but probably not going to do too much marketing there. So the cost is going to be the registration of the official account, and then whether you're hiring someone or outsourcing it, to have people writing at least monthly, probably weekly posts on that platform. That can cost on the lower end $5,000-$6,000, on the higher end maybe $10,000-$12,000. But that isn't really an advertising place you want to start if you're just getting sort of used to the market or you don't have that large Chinese community. Weibo is probably where you'd want to start for running a basic marketing campaign. The only trouble is it's similar to WeChat in that you first have to be doing this weekly posting on Weibo, and then you run campaigns on top of it, which makes it a little bit more expensive because you're paying a little bit for this weekly upkeep and then running campaigns. Luckily, however, those campaigns aren't too expensive. So you could probably do that for maybe $7,000-$8,000 USD a year. I'm just using USD as an example, because I don't know which currency is most convenient. And then I'd probably recommend using some version of ByteDance. I would really recommend, I think Total campaigns are really well priced right now, and they are super flexible. So you could actually use a Total campaign and drive it to a website, drive it to a Weibo account, or drive it to a WeChat account, depending on what ultimately that strategy looked like. So I'd probably stick there. Having a local landing page also can be super useful. But again, a search engine marketing tends to work best for specific majors. So for example, if I knew you were, say, a culinary arts school, and you're really focusing on cooking and things like that, then it's very easy to hyper target those keywords. If you are specifically doing electronic engineering or certain forms of engineering, you can hyper target those key search terms, in which case search engine marketing campaigns are very effective. If you're a liberal arts college and have sort of a wide spectrum of many different majors, search engine marketing, especially in the undergraduate age, not graduate programs, then search engine marketing isn't as strong or isn't as useful. So again, it would really depend which media channel that makes sense. Has a lot to do with your best and key programs that you want to go to market with. The main thing I would sort of say as a caveat here is I almost never recommend an institution just go as a brand themselves. So you would never just go as like the name of your institution and just talk about your institution, because that doesn't it doesn't resonate well enough. There's too many schools and there's too many people promoting in China and there's too much information. It's much, much more powerful to really think about what are your best fit programs for the Chinese market. Do you have anything that's in the hard sciences, right? Do you have anything that has some key competitive advantages? Is it some form of scholarship that you're offering? Do you have a great location and job placement? Do you have any sort of work in country or visa support program? I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. You really need to think about what makes you special and what makes you unique, and then focus hard on telling that story. We generally call those things points of pride. So you want to emphasize on those points of pride and then drive that story hard in your social media and your search campaigns.
Thank you. All right. Next question is fairly specific. Is what do you think about Bilibili? It seems getting popular. It's Chinese user for learning and considered as a Chinese version of YouTube. Do you agree?
So basically, Chinese video, as most people know, used to start out as with Tudou and Youku. And then when those two platforms merged, it got a little messy. It took a little bit of time for them to really figure out what their business model was going to be. And so for a while, because at one point they were charging people for hosting videos, and then they tried advertising, and they would run these horrible 2-minute long advertisements. And then they started moving a little bit into streaming. And so it's taken a little while for that to shake out. And that's what's really given opportunities to Bilibili to come up. It's mostly because Youku and Tudou just took too long to figure out what it was that they were up to. They are honestly, most of Bilibili's revenue now is coming from streaming. Streaming things from live streamers to Chinese dramas, and people are paying sort of to get access to that streaming content. Now, it is true that there is a slight increase in learning content. I'm honestly waiting to see what happens over the next, say, 3 to 6 months. And the reason why I say that is because China's had such a flood of capital into online education, honestly, over the past 2 years, but most recently now due to coronavirus. And we're going to see a big shakeup in which platforms are ultimately used for getting educational content. And so as that happens, we're going to have a much better idea of, is it a third-party application? Is it the existing sort of streaming content where people are going to be sort of actively spending their time? Is there going to be some sort of evolution of something new where, for example, TikTok starts getting into the educational side? They've been trying. There's infinite pushes right now by companies like Zhumu or ClassIn or Weikaijiang, like I showed before, to get into the educational streaming business. I'm not sure at this point who's going to be the winner. And none of them have really made the great case for themselves as to why they're going to be so much better. So my thought is, I wouldn't say don't spend money on Bilibili. I would say first, really think about where you're going to drive the user to. So if you're going to run sort of a cool 30-second video ad, make sure you're driving it to somewhere they can sort of call home, whether it be driving them towards a Chinese web page or a landing page, driving them towards a WeChat account, so you can really effectively capture those leads. Two, make sure generally that you're thinking about what that video is for. Is it a click-through? Or is it for branding? And the reason why I say this is when we think about video marketing, you separate it into 2 categories. One is just sort of like, for example, like a car. And when you see a video about a car, this is why car companies love this. It's basically just telling you a slightly deeper story. They know you're not going to go buy the car right then, but it's for branding purposes. Same thing with consumer brands like Coca-Cola. They're really just trying to tell you a story so that you think about it, so that next time you order some food, you think about getting a Coke or drinking a Coke as well. Now, for an institution, it's a little bit harder. because people don't necessarily want to break. Advertising, sort of just casual engagement, tends not to be sufficient because you don't have the same advertising budgets that, say, a car company or a consumer brand does. Instead, most of your advertising is the other type, which is lead-driven engagement, right? You're not doing it for branding purposes. You're actually doing it for lead acquisition. You want someone to click through and fill out a form. And so just be careful that when you spend money on videos, that you're engaging a community that's willing to click on it, pause what they're doing, pause what they're watching, and go fill out a form, which is not always the case. So that's just the one thing I'd say think about. And then you're doing sort of a video platform that is like for learning or streaming. Some people might not, it might be good for branding purposes, might not get you as much lead gen as you might otherwise want. So try it out, see how it goes, but make sure you're driving, if you're not just trying to get some brand awareness, make sure you're driving to sort some way of getting leads, whether that's a website or WeChat account.
Okay, thank you. My very last question I'd like to ask you is, given the current situation, lots of events and tours are canceled, and we don't know when it's going to be reinstalled. So based on the clients you've been working with, what are some of the changes you have seen and your prediction for what's happening with the education recruiting industry, particularly in the next couple months?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a tough time. So first, I mean, obviously, send out as much support, as much love, attention, care that you possibly can to your Chinese students and their families and your alumni. This is a really difficult time for everyone. So make sure our first reaction is, how can we help them? Second, of course, the reality is the show must go on and we have to actively recruit. We don't think that there's basically no events that aren't canceled through March. Pretty much every major fair is canceled, and a lot of very big global expos like the Mobile World Congress and many others have all been canceled or postponed. Even the China's National People's Congress, like Liaohui, is even potentially getting postponed. And so when you're dealing with that, it's the realistic issue is that most individuals, most campus administrators don't want to take the risk or responsibility of having in-person events. That's probably going to be true at least through April. It is possible, there is this massive campaign to get people back to work, that certain regions relax restrictions earlier, so watch for that, especially early April. In the meantime, definitely do some online info sessions, definitely join live streaming campaigns when possible. This is an incredible time to be doing those online campaigns because people, honestly, now they started out very, very scared, very anxious, very nervous. Now a lot of that anxiety has kind of come down. Now it's a lot of boredom. They're kind of just thinking about their lives, what they're having a little bit of existential moment where they're like, God, what do I want from life? What can I do? Where should I go? And it's not a bad idea to start targeting and be like, you know what, have you thought about your future? Have you really ever thought, you know, that dream you had of being an engineer or a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever it is? This is a pretty good time to be thinking about that. And so if you engage them with the right message, something slightly uplifting, caring about the difficulties they've been through, but also kind of like that that video I shared with you that the government released, sort of, we understand it's a hard time, but you know what, there's a positive side. Dig deep in yourself, figure out what your dream is, and we're going to help you get there as an institution or as a university. And that's a very powerful message that you can say both online in terms of campaigns, but also on live stream and info sessions. So if you need help with those, please do reach out to us, reach out to myself, Cecilia, the CHE team. We're happy to help and see how we can help you craft that message.